The wind howled through the frozen wasteland. Snow covered the ground like a white grave. A lone alien woman sat near a torn and broken tent, holding two small children close to her body. Her arms shook, her skin was pale, and her eyes full of quiet pain. She whispered soft words to the children in her own language, trying to keep them calm, but her voice was weak, and the children were cold, hungry, and silent. No one had come to help them, not for days, maybe weeks. Other aliens in the refugee camp had turned their backs on her. Humans walked by with supplies, but no one stopped, not for her. She was from a race no one wanted to touch, a people blamed for a past war. Then, on that cold morning, something changed. A man named Ethan walked by. He was human. Dressed in warm clothes and carrying a pack of food and medicine, he had a kind face but tired eyes. He had volunteered to bring supplies to the camp, but he had not planned to stop. Until he saw the children. They were watching him, not crying, not moving, just watching. Their eyes were big and empty, full of something deeper than hunger. It made Ethan stop walking. He knelt slowly and reached into his bag, pulling out a protein bar. "Here," he said gently, holding it out to them. The smaller child flinched, but the older one reached out carefully. Not for the food, but for his hand. Before Ethan could react, the mother grabbed his wrist. Her voice was soft but firm, full of sorrow. "Please," she whispered, "adopt." Then Ethan was stunned. The snow fell harder, covering their heads. He stared at the woman, her face half hidden behind frost and hair. She was young, maybe even beautiful under all that pain. But what shocked him most was her eyes, not fear, not begging, but hope. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you don't even know me." "I know you stopped," she replied. "You are the first to stop." She let go of his wrist and looked down, ashamed. "I am Sira," she said. "My children, they are dying." Ethan looked at the children again. Their small arms clung to her. Their clothes were thin, and their feet bare in the snow. He felt something break inside him. "Let me get you to the aid tent," he said quickly, pulling off his coat and wrapping it around the smallest child. Sira tried to stand, but her legs failed her. She fell into his arms. Cold and light, Ethan held her up. Surprised by how weak she felt, he waved at a drone overhead. Calling for help, the drone blinked red and hovered away, sending a signal to Camp HQ as he waited. Ethan looked down at the children again. "Do you have names?" he asked softly. The older child whispered, "My name is Luma, and she is Tiri." Ethan nodded. "Okay, Luma. Tyr, let's get your mom safe, all right?" He smiled, trying to make them feel calm. But inside, he was not calm. He was angry at the cold, at the people who ignored them, at the system that let this happen. Minutes later, a medical pod arrived. Two aid workers stepped out, looked at Sira, and hesitated. "She's from the Virilon group," one of them said. "HQ doesn't want trouble?" Ethan stepped forward sharply. "Do I need to report your refusal to help a dying mother and two kids?" he snapped. The workers went quiet, then helped him lift Sira into the pod. As the pod flew away, Ethan sat beside the children. They didn't talk, didn't cry, just leaned against him. Trusting a stranger, that night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking of Sira's words, "Adopt them." He knew she didn't mean paperwork or law. She meant love, warmth, a chance at life, and somehow, in that frozen moment, he felt like he had already said yes. The camp was quiet after sunset. Only the flickering security lights gave life to the shadows. Ethan walked through the cold night alone, holding a blanket and a warm drink in his hands. He was headed to the medical tent where Sira was being treated. The children Luma and Tiri were sleeping in a shelter, curled up like kittens. But Ethan's heart felt heavy. Too heavy to sleep. When he reached the tent, the guard outside didn't move. just glanced at him and said, "She's weak, but stable." "Won't wake up for a few hours?" Ethan nodded, stepped inside, and saw her. Sierra was lying on a cot, tubes in her arm, her face pale and still. For a moment, he thought she might not wake at all. He placed the blanket on a chair and sat. Down beside her, he didn't speak, just looked at her and wondered how someone so strong could look so broken. The silence was deep until a whisper broke it. "You're not supposed to be here." Ethan turned. An old alien man with folded arms stood in the corner, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You're the one who brought her in?" The old man asked. "Yes," Ethan replied, keeping his voice calm. "Why?" The man stepped forward, slowly, like he was carrying a burden of centuries. "She's not just another refugee," he said. "She's Virelin Royal." Ethan blinked, surprised. Royal. "She was married to one of the highborn," the man said, "when the war started. Her kind were hunted, betrayed by their own council." Ethan looked back at Sarah, now seeing her differently. She wasn't just a mother trying to survive. She was someone who had lost everything, and still. She asked him to save her children, not herself. She shouldn't be here. The old man continued, "If others find out who she really is, they won't protect her, they'll finish the job." Ethan stood up, his hands in fists. Then, "I'll protect her," he said, without thinking. The old man looked at him and smiled just a little. "That's a heavy promise, human." Outside, the wind began to howl again, louder than before. Something didn't feel right. Ethan turned to leave the tent only to hear a loud bang in the distance. He ran, heart racing, toward the sound. It came from his own shelter, where the children were supposed to be safe. When he arrived, the door was wide open. Inside, the bed was empty. The children were gone. Panic hit him like a punch in the chest. He looked around the dark snow, seeing small footprints leading away. Not walking, dragged, without wasting a second. Ethan grabbed a flashlight and followed the trail. His boots crushed the snow as he ran. The trail led toward the edge of the camp, through a dead forest of twisted trees. His breath came fast, his hands frozen, but he kept going. Finally, he heard a soft cry. "Help!" It was Luma's voice. Weak and scared, he ran faster, and then saw them, two shadowy figures holding the children. One of them raised a knife when he saw Ethan. But Ethan didn't stop. He tackled the man, knocking the blade into the snow. The second figure dropped teary and ran, disappearing into the trees. Ethan quickly checked the kid's Teary was crying but unhurt. Luma had bruises on her arms, but her eyes lit up when she saw Ethan. "You came," she whispered, hugging him tightly. "Of course I did," he said softly. Holding them both, "I made a promise." He carried the children back in his arms by the time they reached the shelter. The old man was waiting. He didn't say a word, just nodded. Like he had seen this future already, Ethan sat with the kids in his lap, warming their hands and feet. His thoughts were spinning. Who were those men? Why were they after the children? And what would happen if the camp leaders found out? Later that night, as the children slept beside him, Ethan made another promise to himself. He would not let Sierra or her kids be taken again, no matter what the cost. What he didn't know was, someone in the camp was watching him, and they had already sent a message to someone off-world. Target located. The widow lives. The heirs are with a human. Morning sunlight touched the camp gently, but for Ethan, the air still felt cold. After the attack last night, he had barely slept. The children Luma and Teary were still curled beside him under a blanket, breathing softly. Their tiny fingers clung to his shirt like they were afraid he'd vanish. Ethan knew he couldn't let them stay in the camp any longer. Not after what happened, not when unknown enemies were trying to take them. He walked to the medical tent where Sierra was slowly recovering. Her eyes opened as he entered. She looked weak, but the fire in her was still alive. They came for them, Ethan said, his voice low. Sierra's breath caught. Are they safe? Yes, he replied. They're with me. She tried to sit up, but her body trembled. You must take them far from here, she said. This place is not safe for us. Ethan nodded. I already made that decision, he whispered. I'm taking all of you to my home by midday. Ethan had packed his truck with emergency supplies. He signed release papers for Sarah. Using a fake ID from his smuggling days, he wrapped the kids in blankets and helped Sarah into the back seat. They drove past the camp gates quietly. No alarms, no sirens. Just the sound of tires rolling over frozen dirt. His cabin was deep in the woods. Far from any city or patrol zone, a small, worn house with a solar roof and a quiet fireplace inside. Ethan had lived alone for years, never imagining he'd return home with a family of aliens. When they arrived, Luma stared at the trees with wonder. Thierry ran in circles, laughing for the first time in days. Sierra stood on the porch, her eyes wide. It's so quiet, she whispered. Ethan smiled. No one will find you here. The house had only one bedroom, but Ethan gave it to Sierra and the children. He moved to the storage room and made a bed from old blankets and a camping mat. That night, as the fire crackled, Sierra made warm soup using herbs she recognized. In his kitchen, Ethan tasted it and smiled. It's different, he said. It's home. She replied softly. But peace didn't last long. 2 days later, a drone passed over the woods, low and slow. Ethan spotted it through the window and pulled the curtain shut. Sierra's face went pale. They're searching, she said. They won't stop until we're found. That night, Luma had a nightmare. She woke up crying and shaking, whispering, Don't let them take me. Papa. Ethan froze when he heard the word. Papa. She had called him that naturally, without thinking. He sat beside her, stroked her hair, and said, No one will take you later. Ethan sat by the fire alone, lost in thought. He never wanted a family. Never thought he could protect one, but now he couldn't imagine letting them go. Even if it meant danger, even if it meant war. The next morning, Sierra sat beside him holding an old bracelet. She pressed it, and a soft blue light glowed. From within, a symbol appeared, one Ethan had never seen. It's our crest, she said. I didn't want to tell you before, but I know, he replied gently. You were royalty. Sierra looked surprised. You knew? I had a feeling, he said, but it doesn't matter to me, not anymore. All I see now is a mother, a fighter, and someone who deserves a home. Tears formed in her eyes. She looked down, her voice breaking. They will never let us live in peace. Ethan reached out and touched her hand. Then we'll stop running, he said. We'll make this our ground, but far beyond the forest. Someone had found them. The drone had returned to its master, and a message was sent. He has them. The human is protecting the royal heirs. Prepare the extraction. The morning was quiet. Too quiet. Birds that usually chirped in the trees had vanished. Ethan stood at the window, watching the road below his cabin. His gut told him something was coming. Something bad inside the house. Sierra helped Luma braid her hair. Thierry sat on the floor, drawing strange symbols with crayons. Their small alien voices filled the room with peace. But Ethan's mind was not at peace. He kept glancing at the silent skies, waiting. The knock came before noon. Hard, loud, and repeated. 3 sharp bangs. Then silence. Ethan opened the door and saw 2 humans in black uniforms. Alien Relations, Bureau Arb. They didn't smile, didn't greet. One of them, a tall man with sharp eyes, held up a tablet. We've received reports of unauthorized alien miners at this location, he said coldly. You are Ethan Ward. Ethan didn't answer. He just looked over his shoulder at Sierra and the kids, who had gone quiet. They're with me. He said finally, I'm protecting them. That's illegal? the officer replied. They are not registered under Earth's refugee protocols because no one would protect them. Ethan said, his voice tight. They were abandoned, attacked, and almost killed. We're not here to debate ethics, the officer said. We're here to take the minors into custody. Ethan stepped in front of the door. You're not taking them. Behind him, Sierra stood slowly, holding Luma and Thierry close. The children looked terrified. The officer's partner scanned them with a device and frowned. Sir, he whispered, one of them has royal virulent blood. Both are heirs. The lead officer narrowed his eyes. His tone changed slightly softer, but more dangerous. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into, Mr. Ward. These aren't just refugees. They're political weapons. Ethan's. Heart pounded, he turned to Sierra, who gave a small nod. Then she stepped forward and spoke for the first time. I am Sierra of House Valari, widow of Lord Keth, and these are my children. They are under my protection, and by Varellon. Custom, also under his, she said, pointing to Ethan. The officers exchanged a tense look. One whispered into his comms, HQ. We have a Varellon noble and 2 heirs in human custody. Ethan spoke before they could respond. They're not in custody, he said. They're in my home. The officer looked at him, face hard as stone. You have 7 days to submit full adoption paperwork and alien guardianship transfer. Otherwise, they'll be taken into off-world custody. Ethan didn't flinch. Then you'll get the paperwork. The officers turned and walked away, their boots crunching on the gravel. Sierra closed the door behind them, locking it. Ethan leaned back against the wall, his hands shaking. What do I do now? He whispered. Sierra took a deep breath. There's only one place we can go, she said. There is someone in the city, an old friend of my husband. He forged papers once, long ago. He can do it again. Ethan didn't hesitate. I'll go tonight. No, she said firmly. You'll take us with you. That evening, under darkness, Ethan loaded his truck again. The children were silent, scared but trusting. Sierra held them close in the back seat as they left the safety of the forest behind. The city lights glowed in the distance, but danger lived in every corner. They parked in a hidden alley and entered a small repair shop. Inside, a bald alien man with silver eyes looked up from his work. Sierra, he said, shocked, you're alive. Barely, she replied. This human saved us. The man nodded, slowly taking in Ethan, the children, and the urgency in their faces. He reached under his workbench and pulled out an old data pad. Give me their DNA, he said. I'll give you new names, new IDs, new lives. Hours passed as he worked in silence. Ethan stood guard by the window, gun in hand, at dawn. The man handed Ethan a glowing card. Congratulations, he said. You're now legally their father. Ethan looked at the card, heart pounding, then at the children, who slept beside Sierra on a worn couch. He whispered, I won't lose you. But outside, in the shadows, a red lens blinked to life. A silent drone captured their faces and sent a signal far across. The stars, the human has adopted the heirs. Confirm extraction orders. The truck rumbled softly as it moved through the hills. Darkness covered the road like a thick blanket. Ethan drove with both hands tight on the wheel in the rearview mirror. He saw Sierra watching the children sleep. She hadn't spoken since. They left the city. They had forged new IDs, escaped the officers, and bought time. But Ethan knew time was running out. He could feel it like cold fingers crawling up his spine. Something was coming, something big, after hours of silence. Sierra finally spoke. I haven't told you everything. Ethan glanced back at her but didn't say a word, she continued. Voice quiet but steady. My children. They are not just heirs. They are the last living blood of the Virulon throne. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I thought your husband was a noble. He was, she said, But more than that, he was first in line to be emperor. Ethan slowed the truck to a stop near a quiet riverbank. He turned off the engine. The only sounds were water flowing and wind rustling the trees. "Tell me everything," he said. Sira took a deep breath and looked up at the stars. "Our empire was not always cruel," she began. "My husband, Keth, wanted peace with humanity. He signed a secret treaty to end the war, but before the treaty could be made public, he was killed. Killed by your own people." Ethan asked. She nodded slowly by the High Council. She said they framed him, blamed the humans, and started a new war. "I was pregnant when they came for me," she continued. "I escaped with the help of one loyal pilot and went into hiding. The children were born on a mining moon. No one knew they existed." Ethan sat quietly, trying to absorb it all. "Why come to Earth?" he asked. "I thought it would be safer," she replied. "But Earth is not safe for traitors or royalty. Is that why they're chasing you?" Sira looked at him, tears in her eyes. "If the council finds the children, they'll be executed. They want no bloodline left that could challenge them." Ethan looked at the two sleeping girls, peaceful and unaware. A storm was coming. For them, and he was the only shield they had. He stood and walked to the river, staring into the water. "So what now?" he asked. "Do we keep running forever?" Sira walked up behind him. "I can't run anymore," she whispered. "I'm tired. Then we fight." Ethan said without turning around. "We don't run. We fight." Sira reached into her cloak and pulled out the bracelet again. She touched it, and this time a small cube popped out from within. "This," she said, "is the treaty my husband died for." Ethan took the cube, feeling the weight of it in his hand. "It's encoded with both human and Varellan DNA." She said, "It can prove Keth's innocence. And it needs both a human and a royal heir to activate." Ethan blinked. "You're saying this thing could stop the war?" Sira nodded. "If it's broadcasted across the central network, but we would need access to a high-level transmitter." Ethan knew exactly where one was: an old military outpost deep in the wastelands. Abandoned, forgotten, but still connected. He had scavenged there once. Years ago, it was dangerous, full of traps and long-dead machines. But it might be their only hope. "We'll go there," he said. "We'll show them the truth." Sira smiled sadly. "You'd risk everything for us." Ethan looked back at her, his voice steady. "I already did." Suddenly, a sharp noise echoed from behind the trees. Ethan drew his blaster and pointed it toward the dark. A shadow moved fast, too fast. A shadow moved fast, too fast. Then another. Sira grabbed the children and pulled them into the truck. Ethan fired a warning shot. A scream rang out, followed by the sound of retreating feet. "They found us," he said, heart pounding. Sira slammed the truck door shut. "We need to move now," as the engine roared back to life. Ethan drove into the night with one goal: reach the outpost, broadcast the truth, and protect the future of two small girls who now called him father. But far above them, in orbit, a dark ship activated. Inside, a voice hissed over the speakers. "He has the treaty. The human is heading toward the relay station. Intercept and destroy." Asterisk dust flew behind the truck as Ethan drove across the deadlands. The land was cracked and lifeless, like a battlefield that time had forgotten. Sira held the children in the back seat, whispering soft words in there. Language. Luma clutched the glowing cube in her tiny hands as if it were their last hope. Tiri slept on her mother's lap. Unaware of the war chasing them, the abandoned outpost was only hours away. It was their only chance to send the truth across the stars, but Ethan knew the enemy wasn't far behind. They would come fast and armed. He had to be ready. They stopped just before sundown, beside a jagged hill where Ethan had once hidden supplies. He opened a rusted locker buried in the dirt and pulled out 2 blasters, a solar shield, and 1 old combat suit. It smelled like oil and smoke, but it still worked. "You've done this before," Sierra said, watching him strap on the gear. Ethan gave a tired smile. "Let's just say I wasn't always a quiet forest guy." He handed her a blaster. Sierra took it without question. "I hope I never have to use it," she whispered. "But I will." As night fell, they reached the outpost. It stood tall on a rocky cliff, its antennas broken but still humming with ancient power. The entrance was half buried in sand, guarded by fallen beams and dust. Ethan cleared the path and led them inside. The lights flickered weakly as the door creaked open. Inside, the air smelled like rust and burnt circuits. But the core relay was still active, pulsing faintly at the center of the command room. Ethan powered up the terminal and placed the cube into the receiver. A soft hum echoed through the chamber. A blue light surrounded the children. Luma and Tiri stood still, and a holographic seal appeared in the air. "Kath Valeri, confirmed." A robotic voice said, "DNA of heirs. Confirmed, human genetic key. Confirmed, broadcast ready." Ethan looked at Sarah, who gave a slow nod, but before he could press the final button, the warning alarm screamed. They had arrived. Outside, 3 enemy ships landed with heavy thuds. Dark-armored soldiers poured out, weapons drawn. Inside the outpost, Ethan activated the shield doors, sealing the exits. "We're outnumbered," Sierra said. "I know," Ethan replied, "but we're not out yet." He handed Luma a headset. "Stay in this room. Don't leave no matter what." She looked scared, but nodded. "You promise you'll come back?" she asked. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "I always keep my promises." Ethan and Sierra moved to the hallway, blasters ready. The door exploded inward, and the first wave of soldiers charged in. Ethan fired, hitting the lead soldier square in the chest. Sierra moved beside him like a ghost. Fast and focused, she fired 3 perfect shots, dropping the enemies before they touched the floor. But more kept coming, wave after wave. They were being pushed back, cornered. Ethan's shoulder was hit, and he cried out. Sierra dragged him behind cover, her eyes full of fury and fear. "We can't hold them," she whispered. "Then I'll buy you time," Ethan said, trying to stand. "No," she said, holding him down. "We do this together." In the command room, Luma saw the blinking button still untouched. She looked at her sleeping sister, then back at the button. She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and pressed it. The cube spun in the air, and the hologram of Lord Keth appeared. He spoke in Virulon, then in human tongue. A message of truth, peace, and betrayal broadcast across the galaxy. Outside, the enemy commander received the transmission and froze. The soldiers hesitated. Orders were shouted, confusion spread. They hadn't expected the truth to go live. Inside the outpost, Ethan and Sierra used the moment of chaos to push forward. They fought their way back to the command room. When they entered, Luma ran into Ethan's arms. "I did it, Papa," she whispered. "I pressed the light." He hugged her tight, eyes full of tears. "Yes, you did," he said. "You saved us all." Behind them, the soldiers dropped their weapons, receiving ceasefire orders from their command ships. The truth had broken their mission. Sierra turned to Ethan, breathing hard. "We made it," she said. "For now," he replied. "But the fight's not over." She smiled softly. "Then we keep fighting." Sunlight broke through the dusty clouds, shining down on the ruined outpost. Ash floated in the air, like snow made from the past. The battle was over, but the war had left scars on everything, on stone, on silence, and on hearts. Ethan stood outside, his shoulder bandaged, watching the sky for the first time in days. No ships hovered overhead, no soldiers waited in shadows. Only peace remained for now, inside the outpost. Sarah sat beside Luma and Tiri, the children huddled. Close, tired, but safe. The broadcast had gone through. The message from Lord Keth played again and again across systems and star stations. The truth had reached the galaxy. The Virulon Council tried to deny it, but the evidence was clear. Their lies shattered like glass. New leaders were rising, those who believed in peace, those who believed in second chances. A ship landed nearby, but this time, it carried no weapons. Out stepped a tall Virellan woman in white robes, her face serious but kind. She approached slowly and bowed to Sira. "My name is Eleni," she said. "Your husband was my cousin." Sira stood with grace, her eyes full of pride and pain. "You're not here to take my children, are you?" "No," Eleni said. "I'm here to honor them, and the human who protected them when no one else would." Ethan stepped forward, unsure what to say. Eleni looked at him with deep respect. "You are no longer just a protector," she said. "You're family now." Luma ran to Ethan and grabbed his hand. "Papa, can we go home now?" He smiled gently. "Soon," he said. "But first," Eleni handed them something, a crystal, sealed with royal markings. "This is your new record," she said. "Your family is recognized, your bond is legal in all systems." She looked at Ethan. "You're no longer just a guardian, you're their father." And her equal, Sira, stepped closer to Ethan, her voice soft. "I gave up everything, my crown, my safety, my name, but you gave me more. You gave me hope." Ethan looked at her, his voice low. "And you gave me something I never thought I needed. A reason to live." They stood in silence, the children hugging their legs. The wind moved gently through the broken metal around them, but their hearts were full of warmth. Later that night, they returned to the cabin in the woods. The forest greeted them like an old friend. This time, there were no threats. No shadows, only peace. Tiri ran through the grass barefoot. Laughing, Luma sat by the fire, drawing pictures of stars, ships, and her new family. Ethan sat on the porch, watching them. Sira joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You're quiet," she said. "Just thinking?" he replied. "About what?" "How lucky I am," she smiled, then reached into her pocket and pulled out the cube, the treaty cube. "It's empty now," she said. "Its purpose is done. Then let it be buried." Atitha said, "Not to forget, but to begin, together." They buried the cube under the old tree beside the cabin, a place where roots would grow, where their past would rest, and their future could rise. Weeks passed, then months, and one quiet evening, Luma asked Ethan a question that made his heart stop. "Papa, are you and Mama married?" Ethan and Sira exchanged a look. She laughed softly, the first real laugh in a long time. "Well," Ethan said, "not yet." "Why not?" Tiri added, climbing into his lap. He looked at Sira, then at the stars, and said the words that ended a journey and began something greater. "Because I was waiting for the right moment." He turned to Sira, took her hand, and whispered, "Will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You adopted my children, risked your life, and saved my soul," she said. "Of course I will." And beneath the stars, with their children beside them, a human and an alien widow became more than survivors. They became a family that changed the stars, not with war, but with love.